Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a breast cancer thriver turned staunch, unapologetic, loud supporter and advocate for others, bringing education and awareness through a myriad of medical experts, therapists, caregivers, and other survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis is incredibly overwhelming with the mounds of information out there, especially on Dr. Google. I get it. I'm not a doctor, and I know how important it is to uncover accurate information, which is my ongoing mission through my nonprofit. The podcast includes personal stories and opinions from breast cancer survivors and professional physicians, providing the most up-to-date information at the time of recording. Evidence, research, and practices are always changing, so please check the date of the recording and always refer to your medical professionals for the most up-to-date information. I hope you find this podcast a source of inspiration and support from my guests. Their contact information is in the show notes, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have an enormous breast cancer community ready to support you in so many ways. Now let's listen to the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Well, welcome back to part 2 of my conversation with Claire Rumore. In the last episode, we talked about Claire's cancer diagnosis and how her experience led her to create Cancer and Intimacy. Today, we're diving deeper into what intimacy really looks like after cancer. So we're going to talk about intimacy in the context of cancer and survivorship. How might that differ from what people normally think is intimacy? How can we talk about this, especially when women reach this age of menopause? Because I think I was going through menopause at that time, but I didn't have all of the symptoms that a lot of people have had, like the night sweats and I just didn't have any of that. And I don't know why. So I keep thinking to myself that the painful sex that I was having before my breast cancer diagnosis may have had something to do with that. How can we move through that? I'm just like, how do we make this work?
Gosh, again, another huge question. And thankfully, this topic is being taken more seriously, the topic of menopause in general, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. And we have a lot more resources, a lot more health advocates, influencers, spokespeople coming out and not only speaking about this, but also services now being provided that were not and have not been provided. So we get to talk about this now and not feel ridiculous or in the dark. And so there's a wonderful book about menopause. I'm not remembering the author's name right now. I highly recommend it. The title is basically, "What Fresh Hell Is This?" Introspections about menopause, something like that. But it's an easy book to find, and it just gives a refreshing perspective about, I don't want to call it the horrors of menopause, but the changes, the pretty significant changes. And each woman's journey with her own bodily changes and life phase changes are going to be different. So not everyone is going to map to all of the symptoms. And that's a mixture of lifestyle, diet, genetics, health issues, weight, et cetera, exercise level, mobility, all number of things. And so how we navigate this is, firstly, we need to recognize this is a natural change that happens in the body at a certain age. This is not a punishment. This is not, we screwed something up. It's a natural wisdom of the body to shift modes. We're moving into more of wisdom years. So energy is being moved out of a focus on reproduction, which is a large part of what the sex drive is about. And now that energy is being redirected towards other activities physiologically and in our lives. And so in order to not take this personally, like life is out to get me, why is this happening to me, is the recognition of, oh, this is a natural phase of life, part of life. It's not just happening to me. This is widespread. And the more I can educate myself about what to anticipate, not what to expect, because there's no map, there's no specific menu, like ABC or 1, 2, 3 that everyone's going to experience. But the more I educate myself on what to anticipate, then I won't be blindsided or caught off guard. There's a lot of deconditioning that's really important. It's important for all humans, especially cancer patients when there's been big changes. And it's the deconditioning about what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? What was I taught? What is my truth about that? What does it mean to be a sexual person? Is it my truth, or am I living into some kind of expectation or archetype that's not actually in sync with my nature and what I actually enjoy? And then redefining, well, what is intimacy? What is sexuality? What is sexuality and intimacy in the context of this relationship I'm in, or the future relationship I hope to be in? And really sitting with these bigger questions, because for a lot of us, once we become sexual in our lives at age 16, for me it was 20, other people a little younger. Often once we become sexual, that's what we do for the rest of eternity, the rest of our adult sexual lives, and we don't think about it differently or shift things up. So
Right.
I'm keen on helping people get new language, a new lexicon of activities. I'm very big proponent of permission and possibilities. Like, okay, let's now think outside the box. What else is possible? Let's give you permission to try that on, to explore it, to contemplate it, to be curious, and to think of sex less as a goal-oriented activity, especially when we're coming into survivorship, when we're healing, that we shift out of goal-orientedness and move into process orientedness.
Very interesting.
We're on the journey. The journey is the destination. The orgasm is not the destination.
Okay. I never even thought about that that way. Yeah. I know we talked a little bit about filling the gaps of cancer care in the system, and they overlook that. So one of the things that I would say that medical providers overlook is the mental toll that it takes on cancer patients. They're focused, on the tumor, right? They're focused on getting rid of the tumor, getting you through your treatments and everything like that. And there are a lot of medical providers who are really, really good at recognizing, hey, it's not just about the tumor. This person is going to lose their hair. They're going to lose their breasts. They're going to have a bag. They're going, and so educating oncologists and surgeons and whoever on the other things, the other really big things that cancer brings to our lives. And the sex and intimacy part is part of that.
It's a huge part of it. So first things first, my compassion goes to the oncologists and the clinicians, because their job is so hard. Day after day, they're needing to share very devastating news with people, but also triumphant news of positive changes. But I can't even imagine what that's like for them. And I know with my oncologist, she was seeing 15 to 20 patients a day, and that's a lot. And then checking on patients in the hospital, and then, big shifts. Like I had an emergency situation come up during my care time that wasn't planned for, and my colon perforated. I had to be in the hospital for 2 weeks. I actually had an ostomy bag also for a period of time. And so that was an unexpected divergence for a patient of this oncologist, me, that wasn't expected. So they're having to track a lot of things.
Yeah.
This is where I think the extended care team. So this might look like the nurse practitioners, the nurse navigators, the social workers, the care team having these skills where they could provide the conversation, even if it's just the opening to a conversation. If you ever want to talk about this, if you ever feel you would like more resources or even a referral to another practitioner, I'm available for that conversation. Even just opening the door for that.
Right.
My work, I'm very keen. So cancerantintimacy.com is my work for patients, survivors, and their partners. But I'm developing 2 other realms in my work to create a trinity. One is a consulting and training company to go in and train medical staff on this
Love
exact
that.
thing, giving them scripts, helping them cultivate confidence, helping them move through the work of introspection and seeing where they have their own biases, their own judgments, their own hangups, their own attitudes and belief systems around sex, relationships, body image that will decrease the impact they could have with a patient. So that's stuff I'm working on, putting that in the context of continuing education courses so that there's an extra reason to take
That's
these.
awesome. I am so this makes me really happy to hear that because
Mhm,
and I really do think like Dr.
mhm,
Tiffany Trosto
yeah,
Sandoval, she is since I've met her, she was one of those oncologists. I don't know how she was when she was in
mhm,
practice, but I know by seeing her work online, her reels that she makes, any kind of resource that she puts out there, you can tell that she really has done a lot of work in trying to get into the cancer patient's mind and
yeah,
be able to help them through things like, 5 things you should know before you go into your chemo treatments.
right.
5 things you should know before you lose your hair. So
Exactly.
these are things that are so helpful. She may already, I'm not sure, but 5 things to know about sex intimacy
Mhm.
going through a cancer
Oh, yeah,
diagnosis. Yeah.
exactly. This is a huge part. So this is what whole patient care is about. That we're including all parts of the patient. And really, that needs to be upheld by all participants of a care team. So I was fortunate with my care team and the medical system I was in. I was provided an oncologist, a nurse navigator, a nurse practitioner, a social worker, a dietitian. I had access to acupuncture, I had access to physical therapy, palliative care. A chaplain came and visited me, like a spiritual director, and helped me kind of connect with what are my spiritual feelings, my connection with the divine, whatever that means to me. So they really came at it from all these angles. Now, one of the things that's missing obviously is this psychosexual and relational support. And that's potentially where a new field, a new industry might get created,
Mhm.
or or a whole new set of referrals that clinicians and care team members get educated about, because a number of them who I spoke with, given my professional background, I'm very aware of what's available, but so many of them had no idea there are pelvic
Right.
health therapists, there are sex therapists, there are sexological body workers, there are pelvic body workers. There are all manner of other practitioners ready to go. They're just not called upon. So, this is the third part of my trinity that I'm creating. I'm in the process of creating the Cancer and Intimacy Institute, which is where I'm creating certification tracks for practitioners, more holistic practitioners, but also therapeutic practitioners like marriage and family therapists, psychologists, somatic body workers, and somatic practitioners, spiritual directors, psychologists, so forth and so on, to train them with the skills. If they happen to have a client who has a cancer diagnosis or whose partner does or who's a survivor, and cancer is heavily influencing their relationship, their body, their sense of connection, intimacy, sexuality, then this non-clinical practitioner, non-medical practitioner also has the skills, could be called upon by the clinicians to support the patients in the medical system's workload, caseload, and offer help that the clinicians just don't have time to go
Wow.
into and hold so compassionately.
Well, and I really appreciate your talking about oncologists because it's really easy for me to, as a survivor, to
Mhm.
say things like, well, I wish my oncologist would have said this or that or this or that. So, even from a survivor's point of view, I try to look at different angles of what their life is like, which I definitely understand. Like, I'm one of those people who's, I think I'm just naturally empathetic. I
Yeah.
mean, I love my oncologist. There's things that, we sometimes have a love hate relationship
Oh, yeah,
for a
same.
couple of different reasons, but I do love her, and she absolutely saved my life, and I do know that there are so many oncologists out there who are really doing the work to be more empathetic in their line of work, on top of all the stress that they have to deal with every single day. So
Mhm.
I do think it's so important for all of us, not just the survivor, to understand, what everyone goes through. And I love the fact that you had that kind of um support, your nutrition, your
Mhm.
dietitian, all of those. So, because there are so many people out there who don't have that support. They've
Yeah.
got barriers. They don't have access to that kind of care. And that super breaks my heart, because everyone obviously is a human being and has needs, and everyone deserves the same type of services, the same type of support. And I wish so much that we could change the world, but what we're doing, like, with me podcasting and amplifying stories like yours and what you're
Mhm.
doing out there, all we can do is just keep on doing what we're doing and making little changes
Exactly.
one day at a time, right?
Networking, connecting,
Yep.
supporting each other because none of us can do it by ourselves.
Right.
And one of the things that I'm interested in, and if only this were available to all of us, but standards of care that
Yeah.
aren't just words written in a preamble or, written in paper, but actually put into practice.
Yes.
And I can't oversee all the standards of care. The one I'm taking on is a standard of care as it relates to sexual health, intimacy, relationship, and body image, and really promoting that, even if I'm the one who drafts the first version of it, gets
Mhm.
my colleagues on board, and then moves it forward into the institutional level to be adopted. This is what I would love to see, so that this is the standard of care. Of course, if you're receiving a diagnosis, you're going to get certain material that helps you orient yourself to what to anticipate. But one of those pieces is going to be around sexual health and intimacy relationships. I spoke with a cancer survivor today, and she said, and her journey was 20 years ago, but she said not once did her care team ever bring up sexuality. And she never felt empowered that she could bring it up with them. And so that's affected her survivorship and also her connection with herself and her own body. And yeah, she's a
Well, and
best.
also when we're talking about policy,
Mhm.
there are certain things that you can't say, right? I was just talking to someone earlier. I did a pre-interview with someone who works on policy and, breast screenings, making sure that everyone has the proper breast screenings depending
Yeah,
on, their dense breast tissue or whatever.
exactly.
And there are a lot of men who are making these decisions. And if
Right.
you say the word breast, it makes them uncomfortable, right? So being able to navigate that and using the proper words, imagine going in and saying sex and intimacy,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
pleasure, things like you can't use those
Now
words.
we have to use code words.
No.
Exactly. Exactly.
Even
But
though, first of all, men usually love breasts and they love sex, so you would think that they would want to, be on board no matter what to make it better for the woman. I love this fact that you talk about pleasure and luxury. You often emphasize the pleasure is not a luxury, but part of aliveness. Can you unpack what this means for someone who feels their body post treatment has changes in ways that they didn't expect? And I also want to talk about what are the different types of intimacy besides penetration?
Mhm. For sure. So I like to use a framework where we make distinctions. What is eros? What is something that's sexual? And then what is sexualness? Because these are three different things. And so when I say that intimacy really means our connection to our aliveness, intimacy is how we connect with our eros. So another word for eros is our life force energy, our vitality, our sense of our own aliveness. And unfortunately, the words can be misconstrued and can be layered with taboo and belief systems that clog the genuine meaning, the authentic meaning of the word. So we have eros, which is vitality, life force energy. Something that's sexual is more of the, again, from my linguistic viewpoint, And what I'm meaning in my frameworks, something that's sexual is more of the like PV, like this more sexualized, the performative, the goal orientedness. And this is not a bad thing. I'm more drawing distinctions. We have vitality, just the energy running through our body. Then we have sexuality is when we have a desire for something and we move towards it. And we might do our flirty, performative, I want this, I have a goal. We're very goal directed in that context. And then sexualness is more of an essence. It's like our personality. It's a genuine flirtatiousness that just comes through our being. It's not meant as a seduction. So sexualness is more of an essence.
So
That
that's like when somebody says, "Oh my god, she is so sexy." And
Mhm.
just the way you look, the way you talk, the way you move. Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas if she were more in the sexualized, like she's trying to be provocative, as opposed to just her inner essence
Just who she
exuding.
is, yeah.
It's just who she is.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So when we look at these three things, eros is vitality, sexuality, meaning performance and goal orientedness, and then sexualness as the essence that's coming through. So, sexualness as being the essence that's coming through us, we can see that there's quite the spectrum of what intimacy and pleasure can mean. And it doesn't need to be reduced to just, as some teachers of mine used to call it, it doesn't need to be reduced to wiggle, wiggle, pop. We get to go far beyond just the movement towards orgasm.
Right.
And so I use the framework, I mentioned this earlier about the erotic blueprints. So the 5 erotic blueprints show us there are different ways different people access pleasure. There are different pathways to pleasure. So those blueprints are energetic, and I'll briefly describe what these mean: sensual, sexual blueprint, kinky blueprint, and shapeshifter. And so what this means for our purposes, someone who's more energetic means the subtle is what really turns them on. Like maybe it's just hand holding or being in proximity to someone. They can feel energy. They need emotional connection, emotional rapport. They maybe like eye gazing or breathing together or just being held gently. It's a very slow, soft, subtle as their access point to pleasure. Someone who's sensual is more of the romantic in the traditional sense. They love their senses being engaged. They love the foreplay. They love the tastes and the smells and the touches and the massages and the baths and lots of closeness and togetherness with this longer arc moving towards escalation, turn on, orgasm, climax. Whereas the sexual blueprint, so this is someone who accesses pleasure through a faster escalation. They don't need foreplay. They want to
Just
be
get it.
naked right away. Just
Yeah.
get it on. Just yeah, bam, bam. Thank you, man. Like there's a lot of enjoyment in the nakedness and the intensity and the passion. So that's someone, and we can be more than one. But usually we have one that's sort of the key to our front door to the house of turn on, as I like to put it. The kinky is not so much someone who needs whips and chains and power exchange to get turned on. What we mean in this context is someone who needs something that's taboo or naughty or violating the prohibitive. And that's what gets them their engine started. And then this final one, the shapeshifter, is someone who is fed by all of the other 4. It just depends on the day and the time. They love the variety, they need the variety. It's not so much they can shapeshift to meet someone else's desires. It means that their desires occupy all 4 of the others. And so I love using these frameworks because, as you could tell by my brief description, that's already a whole big rainbow of pleasure access points and all of the activities that would feed each of these blueprints, each of these different people, and that we can go between them all. There's from subtlety all the way to maximum intensity and taboo and sensuality. There's a
You,
lot there.
I would maybe you can help me put this into the right box. When I had my breast surgery, I had the deep flap, so I had a lot of drains. I had
Mm-hmm.
drains coming out both sides here, up here. And my husband helped clean me. He
Oh,
put me in the shower. He
yeah.
drained my drains every day. He
Mm.
bandaged me back up, helped me put my lacy bra back on, and he
Mhm.
did all of that and washed my hair.
Mhm.
I would argue that that is such a wonderful form of intimacy right there.
Exactly.
And it I remember thinking back about that and thinking, "Holy cow," I mean, just the mere fact that I had him to be able to do that is a pretty big deal, and
Mhm.
we're very touchy-feely anyway, we always have been. Even at nighttime when we're sleeping, we somehow figure I don't know, it always comes to be where we put our feet together, the bottoms of our feet. So I'll be
Aw.
laying one way and he'll be the other way, and we find each other's feet, and
Aw,
we
yes. That's so sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and we
Exactly.
just love or, like, if we're laying another way, our hands find each other, and we hold hands for a while. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's exactly it because we tend to default to erogenous zones
Mhm.
as the way to access pleasure and intimacy. But actually, if we span out, we have a whole body with trillions of nerves and sensation points. And there's so much access when we slow things down and allow things to be softer and subtler,
Mhm.
allow feet to touch, allow hand holding to be enough,
Yeah.
allow, a caress or touching the hair
Yeah.
of our loved one.
And I
Yeah.
you mentioned something at the beginning of our interview when you had a community of people
Mm.
who, filled that need.
Mhm.
We can say that, regardless of whether, you know, you are, gay or not gay, I I think that where you were going with that too is like for if somebody doesn't have a husband that when they're going through breast cancer or, I make this about women just because that's who I am and I had breast cancer. Some people don't have another person
Mhm.
who is their lover or whatever to do that, right? For you, you found that comfort in a community. So
Mhm.
intimacy can come from the same sex as well.
Oh, absolutely. The same sex, the same gender, from a pet, like there's a sweetness that's there, a comforting. Because really, from my experience, what a cancer patient is needing, and even a survivor who's newly into survivorship, it becomes more about safety
Mhm.
as opposed to intensity. So a lot of conventional sexuality is about escalation, moving fast, even if there is foreplay. It's like we know where we're headed. And when we can shift our focus to be more in the present and maybe just floating instead of moving in a straight line towards a destination, it gives our nervous system a chance to recalibrate. Because when you've been poked and prodded and surgically
Mhm.
reoriented and cut into, carved, and put chemicals into the body, it can be in this like, and we might override that because we're like, I'm better. The scans say I'm good. I'm healthier. I put my weight back on. What's the problem? Let's move on. But
Yeah.
the body's actually saying, time out.
Mhm.
I'm still catching up with whatever the heck that was that just happened. And so that's why I strongly encourage people to slow things down, put an emphasis on safety. I don't necessarily mean physical safety because
Mhm.
we're probably safe in our environments. We don't have threats coming at us from the outside. I'm talking more about a sense of safety that's from sourcing from the inside and
Yeah.
the
You know
nervous
where I
system.
got that? I got that through, I went to, regular Reiki,
Oh, nice.
and that
Perfect.
was
Yes.
so good for me. Oh my gosh, it was
Uh,
so spiritually, I mean, and I had such a great Reiki person, and, she was wonderful. I got that through Reiki, and even just deep conversation with someone who listens, and a really good therapist who is really helpful. I think that just all of those put together can really help with that intimacy.
Absolutely. Because again, thinking outside the box, intimacy doesn't just happen with a partner. A lot of us don't have partners. For me, in that context, I didn't want a partner when I was going through my journey.
Mhm.
And so we need to recontextualize
Mhm.
and normalize that
Yes.
whatever you're feeling called to, it does not need to look like the conventional, traditional, and it might be better for you that it doesn't, and give people more options.
Also, like with my husband, he's 64 now. We
Mhm.
also have to think about men in when
Mhm.
they get older, their bodies change too.
They do.
They're, everything changes for both of us.
Mhm.
So it can't always be about penetration sex. I mean,
Mm-mm.
I mean,
And also nor
I
should
know,
it.
I'm pretty sure I know some 90-year-olds who are having sex, but, that's kind of unusual, I mean, a lot of times that just doesn't happen. Can you talk about erotic grief? What is that?
Yeah, I'll give you a little snapshot. So, erotic grief is the first part of a framework I'm developing. And what it's focused on is that when we have losses that happen in an erotic or sexuality and intimacy context, such as going into medical menopause, such as losing a body part, having breast removed, or having a prostate removed, or in any way, shape, or having a relationship end. Any type of change to what we've been accustomed to in our erotic expression. And this does not need illness to generate erotic loss. Um, there it's important we take a moment to honor what's no longer there, what's no longer available. And I think too much of the time we're bypassing that to move on into the future, try to force our bodies and our beings back into what used to be, what we used to have, or we just give up and feel uh, really let down, maybe punished by life, and give up on sexuality altogether, intimacy altogether. And I say, first things first, let's really take an inventory of what we feel has been lost, what's no longer available, accessible, that we miss, that we're longing for, that we're feeling the absence of. And let's do some ritual around what that meant to us when we had it, what it means now, what it feels like not having it. And I've written an ebook about it called the
Oh,
Erotic Grief Handbook. That's available on
ooh.
cancerandintimacy.com. And I've done a version for patients, survivors, partners, and everybody else. So I highly recommend that book.
I Yeah, it's 'cause I think a lot of times we are so judgmental of ourselves. Oh my gosh, I lost my breast, so I'm not going to be sexual
Mhm.
anymore. That part's over. So like some of us give up and some of us just like that got to get right back on the horse, right? Get right
Mhm.
back in there. So yeah, that's a different way to look at it for sure. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. In the framework, what's after erotic grief is what I call libido listening. And that's where we start to hear the signals from our body
Right.
about libido, and then libido liberation, which is where we then blossom into the new version of our erotic self.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go into this next question. How can partners navigate mismatched desire after cancer without falling into resentment or pressure because of all those things that we have learned from
Mhm.
our, childhood forward? And when we first started having sex, we have so many things to unlearn. So if some people haven't unlearned those things, that part can fall into resentment, right?
Oh, very naturally, very
Yeah.
easily. In a perfect world, the first thing I would recommend for that couple is to get a couples therapist, if that's possible, so that you have someone holding that process with you, holding that emotional unpacking with you. And if that's not available, then in a perfect world, the partner who's feeling the resentment, usually the caregiver, that they have their own therapist or
Yeah.
support person that they're working with, because this can be a lot. The mindset and the experience, or let's say the headspace and the experience of a cancer patient, is so different than the
Mhm.
headspace and the mindset and the experience of a caregiver who's
Mhm.
still able bodied and healthy. And it can be hard to have that empathy when the one with cancer is your partner, your lover, who you want to be with, physically intimate with, but you don't want to hurt them. You don't know what they're available for. They don't know what they're available for. It can be so confusing, especially when the roles of caregiver and lover are having to coexist. So I say, as much as possible, if outside support can be accessed, to do that.
I'm really glad that you said that because I have a lot of people who send me messages and saying, "Hey, I've got this gal who was just diagnosed. She was my best friend or
Mm,
whatever. She was just diagnosed with breast cancer. Are you open to talking to her?" And of course, I'm open to talking to anyone.
for
So
sure,
a
yeah.
lot of times people connect me to people, or if I know someone who's been diagnosed. And really, truly, the very first question I ask them, almost one of the very first questions anyway, is, and like it's not the first question, but
Right.
I ask them,
Early in there, yeah.
"How are you married? Or, do you have a partner? Or if I know, what is your relationship like with your partner?" Because one of my friends was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I've known her for a while. I don't know her husband, but I did ask her, "How is your relationship with your husband?" And she says, "It's not good. He's an alcoholic. He's not understanding. And so she ended up moving out in with her mother,
Good.
and I went with her to her first oncology appointment because I was the one that could provide her with that comfort and safety. So I always ask people that. And I honestly do believe that it doesn't matter how the relationship is, every single couple should go to therapy. And my
Awesome.
husband and I did. We went to therapy, and we've gone to therapy on and off throughout our whole entire marriage, which I
So
am
healthy.
I'm very much a believer that that
Mhm,
is why we are still together to this
mhm,
day, because my
mhm.
husband is willing to go to therapy, and we have gone throughout our marriage. So I try to really encourage people to do that, and I think that that does help with intimacy, and I believe that it has helped with intimacy with my own. So yeah.
Exactly. Now, libido mismatch it's a thing. It's a phenomenon that happens not just in couples confronting illness, but
Mm,
couples confronting life. And
yeah.
so what I've done is also create an ebook called the Libido Journal. And inside
Mm,
that, it's really meant for the mismatched libido zone and helping get in touch with libido. What does libido mean to me? Where am I at with my own libido? So I've done a version that's for a higher libido partner and a lower libido partner, kind of, anyone, not necessarily someone confronting illness. And those are available at my website, clairerumore.com. But I
okay.
also have libido journals at cancerandintimacy.com for patients, survivors, and partners to really look at this and get the
And all of
support.
that will be on our in the show notes for sure. Yeah, that's
This
great.
It's such an important resource because we're not talking about this unless
Right.
we're in a therapeutic context with a practitioner who's trained to speak about these things. We're probably not talking about it, and we might be on the sidelines seething in resentment, even though we don't want to be. We want to be
Mhm.
supportive. We're just not getting our needs met, and we're regressing to a 3-year-old in some of cases.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, like you were talking about with the caregiver, when there is an illness and the caregiver is doing
Mhm.
things that is causing resentment in the patient. Like, for example, my husband decided it was a super duper good idea to go
Yeah.
buy a motorcycle right in the middle of my chemo treatments. I was so fucking mad. And we talk about this. We
Oh my
actually
goodness.
interviewed together
Nice.
early on. I had
Nice.
my friend John interview us, and we talked about that. I was angry with him for buying a motorcycle because I can't stand motorcycles, and he decided to do that. And I was scared, of losing him and all of
Of
that.
course.
And then,
Jeez.
he was resentful towards me because I wanted to go to New Orleans to get my breast surgery because I wanted the deep flap, and we don't have anyone here in Reno who does that. So he was
Right.
angry with me. So we literally fought when I was dealing with cancer. We were both resentful. But you know what? Sometimes when you fight like that, that's communication.
Yeah.
We communicated what we were thinking, right?
Yeah, sometimes the steam has to be let blow off.
And then, of course, it led to us, being even closer. So I
Yeah.
think that sometimes when people think that people are fighting, oh, you know, they're not good together. They shouldn't be together.
No,
If that was the case, we would not even be together. We fought a lot.
that's
So
not the
many,
case.
many
Yeah.
people feel awkward or afraid to even begin these conversations. What's the
Mhm.
first piece of advice you can give someone who doesn't know where to start? And I will tell you that somebody asked me to go to Las Vegas to Sunrise Hospital. They were
Mhm.
able to get me there to speak in front of a bunch of survivors
Oh,
to
nice.
talk about uncomfortable topics, one being sex and intimacy and also body image. So this is a super important question. How do they do that? What
Mhm.
advice do you have?
Yeah. Well, with partners, one of the most vulnerable yet like break the ice approaches is to name what's here. And what I mean by that is name what I'm feeling emotionally. So naming what's here emotionally. So you say like I'm feeling really awkward about bringing this up, or I'm feeling really insecure right now. I'm feeling really scared. I'm just naming what's so to break the ice instead of, trying to have the whole big sex conversation all in one go. It's like I would love to talk about our sex life, but I just feel so scared to do it, or I don't want to offend you. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to, just naming what's here. This is awkward. This feels awkward. I feel uh, really uncertain what to say. And then doing one's best to next name, like, I miss being close with you. I miss how we used to do this or that, or just again, naming what's so and sharing that vulnerability. And regardless of who initiates the conversation, the person journeying with illness or the partner, which is someone gently, very slowly starting that conversation. And I have a tool that I created that's on cancerandintimacy.com, and it's called Conversation Cards, specifically around how to initiate conversations around intimacy, sexuality, emotionally vulnerable topics in a gentle way, in a very framed way, so that this doesn't escalate into, I'm feeling pissed off now, or, it's just like meant to be about listening and understanding. So it's a communication tool focused on intimacy and vulnerable topics.
I love the cards idea. It just made me realize that I ordered some cards for me and my husband. We know each other really well, but I guarantee that there's something in there that
Oh, yeah.
will come up where I can ask. But I got them for Valentine's Day, and I haven't gotten them in the mail yet.
Oh,
To start the
gosh.
conversation, like asking tell me about what, or whatever. And I just
Totally.
thought that, for people like us, it's like having like cards like that
Mhm.
also are all part of the intimacy.
Completely, and
Yeah, romance.
mine are digital downloads, so they'll arrive in one's inbox immediately. No need to wait.
Oh my gosh, I really want those. I really wanna
Mhm.
have that conversation with my husband. This
Yeah,
is
the
so
little
fun.
sweet prompts. Mhm.
So if someone listening right now
Mhm.
realizes this conversation resonates deeply, what kinds of resources or pathways for support are available to them? And again, I'm going to have all of this in the show notes, but
Mhm.
kind of give us a good idea of what they can expect.
Sure, gosh. Well, I can offer what they can expect from my world anyway. Um, Depending on where this person is at in their journey, I've done my best to create a number of resources on cancerandintimacy.com. The vast majority are free and ready to download. And these are meant as empowerment tools, whether that's having conversations with one's partner, having conversations with one's doctor or care team, whether it's educating oneself about treatments and effects, or body image and empowerment, or I need some help with my communication skills in the context of my relationships. I developed a number of things. The other piece that's so important to me is helping folks normalize what they're experiencing, and emphasizing with bright lights and lots of exclamation points, you are not broken. There is nothing here to fix. This is a natural process coming out of an unnatural, unfortunate, depending on one's context and feelings about their own journey, but coming out of a challenging experience, being ill. It's not your fault. You did nothing wrong. And so that's what I want to normalize for people. And not only you're not alone, you're not the only one going through this. There are so many people given that 70% of cancer patients become survivors and go on to live quite a nice long life, there's a lot of people confronting these issues. We just haven't been talking about it, so it's easy to feel isolated. So I like to normalize that for people. And again, the resources I've built on my site help lubricate those conversations and help empower patients, survivors, and partners with education, whether that's about erotic grief, whether that's about ways to cultivate intimacy when what we're used to is not available, whether that's libido journal, whether that's mismatched libidos. It's really helping people understand from a sex therapy and a sexology lens what's going on with them and how it's natural and they can love who they are and even be empowered inside of the experience they're having. Now, my long range vision is to train other practitioners to be available to cancer patients and survivors so that there are plenty more resources, that there's much more writing about this, there's many more services available around this, that there are sex therapists who specialize in cancer and intimacy, and that as soon as someone receives a diagnosis, they're also receiving a folder full of educational material and they're being checked in with throughout their journey at different times by their care team on what are you noticing in your body? What kind of support might you need? How can we help you? Who can we help you connect with as a referral? We're here for you. And so that's what I'm excited about because we can't do this by ourselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm blown away. I'm really happy that you have worked so hard to make this work. Oh, and then we're going to circle back around to the first question that I asked you when you said something was missing.
Yeah.
Something was missing. How has that changed?
So the something that was missing was that I wasn't in alignment with my nature and my essence. I was pretending, or without realizing it, I was trying to be someone I wasn't. Again, I mentioned that being 1 degree off. And I didn't mention this earlier on, but what I was experiencing at that time, right before my diagnosis, that really showcased to me that I was off, was I was experiencing what I can only describe as existential nausea. Like everything that had been making me happy in my life before just gave me this feeling of nausea, but not like physical need to throw up, but like a soul need to throw up, just like, this is not for me. This is not who I am. But I didn't know how to make sense of it at the time. It was just a very weird sensation. And so what's changed for me now is that I'm living life on my terms. And I don't remember if I shared this with you, Jamie, when we were having our pre-interview, but early on in my cancer journey, I made an acronym out of cancer because I knew I would be seeing that word a lot and I needed to get in the driver's seat of the narrative early on. So I made cancer into an acronym that stands for Claire's access to her next clearly expressed earth reality.
Ooh.
Cancer. So every time I see that word, that's what it means to me. And I've never been more clear about who I am, what I want, who I want in my life, how I want to be, and what I'm here for. And I'm so grateful for my cancer journey because that would not be what's happening. It was not the direction I was going in. And here I am.
Weird things happen, right? And so we are so grateful that you are in this space talking about this and making it normal because it really does need to be normal. And so with that, Claire, I am so happy that we were able to connect. Thank you, Dr. Tiffany Troso Sandoval, for connecting us and really opening my mind. I mean, I've always been very open about talking about intimacy and sex and things like that, but this has really changed the way I think about things. And it's just opened my world. And I bet you $1,000,000, Claire. So I don't know what happens. Obviously, we have Big Brother listening and stuff like that. But for some reason, I keep getting these ads on social media for this little lemon toy, a sex toy. There's like a lemon and an avocado. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, but
Look.
my phone's sitting right here and I guarantee I'm going to start getting all these ads.
Probably me too, now that you've mentioned it.
Well, is there anything you would like to leave us with before we wrap up today?
Gosh, let's see. To everyone listening, I want to honor you for the journey that you've been on, the experiences that you've had, because this is not easy stuff at all. And I'm glad that you're all here. And Jamie, I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. And I want to encourage you to be open to permission to explore, to reclaim who you are, and possibilities for what else is possible, and that you can get in the driver's seat of your own narrative about what this experience means for you and who you are moving forward. So empowerment is available. We're here
I
for it.
love that. Well, thank you for that. And in the show notes, everyone, I will have Claire's website, email, all of her social media that she's on, and all kinds of fun resources with a code that's CA120 for
CAI
20%
20.
off
Yeah.
on some things. Yeah.
Cancer and intimacy. So CAI 20 for 20% off at the store. And cancer and
Awesome. I
yeah.
love it. Thank you very much. And to my audience, thank you once again for joining us on this episode of Test Those Breasts. It's always a pleasure to have you on. And I would really appreciate if you would share and review and come visit us again. And thank you very much. We'll see you next time on the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Bye for now. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.